Welcome back, MTN Nets podcast. Mostly going to react to the game today on Sunday versus the Clippers. One of the worst fourth quarter meltdowns you'll ever see from any NBA team. I mean, probably it's got to be one of the worst fourth quarters I've ever seen from the Nets in my fandom lifetime. Like, I can't imagine it being much worse. I'm sure you guys know they were outscored 41-15 in the fourth quarter, which you just don't see that every day. So I guess you kind of got to give them like some props for doing something that is that difficult to do. But overall on this road trip, so the last time I talked to you guys, it was after the Heat game. I think it went to overtime. It was that low-scoring game, 96-95 loss, a game they also probably should have won. But on this West Coast trip, it was a three-game West Coast trip with the Trailblazers, the Lakers, and the Clippers. And in the Trailblazers game, they were up by 4 with like a minute and 30 seconds left. They lose that game on the Anthony Simons floater. Mikal Bridges got broke down on defense, and Dinwiddie, I think, was too late getting over on the double team, and they lost on a heartbreaker. And then on Friday, they beat the crap out of the Lakers, which was not really expected, but that was a game where Cam Thomas went crazy, had like 33 points on 70-something% shooting. Lonnie Walker was great. But in this game versus the Clippers, for like 3 quarters, the Nets looked so good and so dominant in this game. And you're sitting there thinking like, hey, like this team may have turned a corner. They're scoring a lot of points. They're getting like good offensive sets. They're letting Cam Thomas be free and run the offense. And the Nets found themselves up by 18 points. It was 104-86 with 10 minutes and 54 seconds to go in the fourth quarter. So all they had to do was hold on to this 18-point lead with, basically 11 minutes left, and they couldn't do it. And for most of that game, Kawhi Leonard was just doing nothing for 45 minutes, and he showed up in the final 3 minutes, and he was awesome. Kawhi kind of salvaged his day. He had 21 points, but I feel like Kawhi entering the final few minutes probably had like less than 10 points. Paul George looked like Pandemic P out there. 5 of 17 in this game, 12 points. He was missing everything. Harden was pretty good, 24 points, had 10 assists, like his usual game. But this game was very weird. It was a game of runs. If you remember, the Nets got out to a 16-0 lead in this game. It was really like crazy. And then somehow the Clippers came all the way back from 16-0 to take the lead, and our jackass head coach did not even use a timeout. I don't know why the man is so allergic to taking timeouts, why he refuses to take timeouts, but you even had like Frank Isola during like the post game having comments about that. Like, wait, why does this team not use timeouts when they definitely should? So there was a 22-0 Clippers run, and I don't think he called the timeout. I'm pretty sure that's how it went. But yeah, a 22-0 run in the fourth quarter is insane. I don't even know how it gets that bad. And I got to give credit to the Clippers. Like, they really stepped up defensively the final, 6-7 minutes. But at the same time, as a head coach, like, you have to call a timeout and just regroup and just find different ways to attack this defense. Like, that's what you're there for, is to coach the game. What are they doing on defense? How can we attack them? What personnel should we have out there? I'll give Jacques Vaughn credit for one thing. He did that weird thing where he always plays offense, defense, and at one point he did put in DFS for Cam Thomas, which pissed me off at the time, but the next possession, I remember DFS clamped up Kawhi. He dribbled out of bounds. So that was one instance where okay, your offense defense thing kind of worked, but it still annoys me how Jacques Vaughn does nothing for this team in terms of calling timeouts when they need it and giving them a schematical advantage. The Nets are, of course, ads are playing, sorry. But the Nets are just not a team that seems to have any advantage through their coaching, which is, this team on paper, I said this last podcast, this team on paper is not this bad. They should not be 17-25 in the Eastern Conference. If they're in the West and it's tougher out there, I would say, okay, maybe. But 17-25 in the East is a pretty rough look. I mean, this team does have enough pieces to at least be within a couple games of 500. This is a pretty unacceptable record. And as I said, they've blown a lot of games this year, most times in late game situations when it's close, they don't win those games because they don't have a closer, and most teams do. Like, even going back to the first game of the season and the second game of the season, I always remember those games. Like, Donovan Mitchell, who's a closer, stepped up in that game in the first game of the year and closed out the Nets. And I think he did it in London or Paris, wherever the hell that game was. Last week. And second game of the year, Luka Doncic, who obviously is a closer, he closed out the Nets in the second game of the year. And even a guy like Anthony Simons, like, yeah, you don't look at him as like one of the best like closers in the game, but a guy who can just break you down off the dribble and get a good look. Like, yeah, the Nets have that in Cam Thomas, but I'll admit, Cam Thomas, like, he did shoot, I think, 4 of 9 in the fourth quarter. So it was not that bad on paper, but you can tell Cam Thomas did struggle a bit to get by his man in the late fourth quarter. There was even a possession where Harden was clamping up Cam Thomas at one point, which I was very surprised by. So, you know, Cam was not spectacular down the stretch, but he was probably the best net today. Mikal Bridges played well. We'll get to that later, but yeah, it's just annoying. Like, they can't afford to blow these games, and yet they are 17-25 now. I think they're out of the play-in tournament right now as the standings stand. I'll take a look real quick, but I'm pretty sure like the Nets are either in 10th or 11th here. They're in 11th right now, so they're a game back of the Hawks. I mean, it's bad. And I guess the one silver lining to today's loss, if there is any, was that Joe Tsai was sitting courtside. So if you're Joe Tsai and you're sitting there watching this game, and you see your team give up a 22-0 run in the fourth quarter in a game where you were up by 18 and then you lose, I would think that should be something to spark some like, hey, we need some changes because shit ain't working here. Like, you would think it would definitely spark that with Joe Tsai, but at the same time, I don't necessarily trust him as an owner. I don't trust him to make the right calls and make the right decisions. And so on. So I don't know. I cannot stand Joe Tsai. Like, there's a rant inside of me for Joe Tsai that may come out one day. I'm still like trying to, keep my composure here, but I'm still just not happy with what he's done with this organization for the past 2-3 years. There were plenty of mistakes in this game from a coaching standpoint with Vaughn, and that just seems to be like a recurring theme. I mean, how do you go from 16-0 to the Clippers coming back and taking the lead, down 16-0, and not calling a timeout? Like, when it got to 16-6, and I think Terrence Mann made back-to-back threes, there were some defensive breakdowns, I'm thinking to myself, like, all right, Jock, let's just call a timeout and regroup. Like, we got off to a great start, 10-point lead, early, middle of the first quarter. Let's just take a timeout. But this jackass just doesn't even call a timeout. He lets them come all the way back from 16-0. Like, why? That was very preventable. Like, yes, I know the Clippers are the better roster by a lot, and they were probably going to come back at some point, but you're not giving your players any type of favor or advantage by just letting that happen. I saw that, I think Brian Lewis tweeted that the Clippers had 4 days off before this game, so it kind of makes sense that they were rusty out the gate, but because I remember there was a shot where Paul George came off like a screen, and he was wide open for 3, and he had just missed a shot, and he missed that shot as well. And I'm thinking to myself, like, man, this might really be our day. Like, something's up with the Clippers. Like, they look awful right now, but, it should have been our day. But another game that got away. So, yeah, if they went undefeated on this road trip, like, we could have been 19-23, I think, which kind of, it's not back to 500, but you would have been creeping back closer. But now, after what's actually happened, they've lost 2 out of 3 on the road. So it's just, it's real shitty. All right, let's go through the players now. So Dorian Finney-Smith had no points. He was 0 of 5, 0 of 3 from 3. Did have 9 rebounds, but yeah, just not a good game from him. Obviously, like, you got to make your shots and at least give us 1 3. DFS got off to a great start this year. He was really hot in the beginning of the year, and it feels like the last, 2-3 weeks or so, maybe longer, he has not been like that great offensively, but I'm hoping that it gets better. He's a guy who obviously can be traded. I do believe he's under contract for next year, and the year after that is a player option. So it might be like 1 or 2 years left on his deal, depending on what he decides to do. But Dorian Finney-Smith is now 30, I believe. So he's a guy who, he makes like $14 million a year or something like that. And he seems like a guy who could be a nice piece to flip. And, they might get a first-round pick out of it, maybe a young player. I'd be fine with it. Like, I feel like by the time the Nets are actually good, I feel like Finney-Smith might be on like his decline. So if I'm the Nets, I'm probably looking to flip him now while he's at his peak value, possibly. But we'll see how they go about it. Cam Johnson. Plenty of discussion for Cam Johnson, who played 29 minutes, went 3 of 11 total, 2 of 7 from 3, did give us 6 assists and 4 rebounds. He was a -8. But Cam Johnson has to shoot the ball better. It is very frustrating. I feel like he is, I called him like post-ankle surgery Joe Harris last podcast. He kind of feels like Taurean Prince at this point on the Nets, where, Taurean was like an average player. But for how much money Cam Johnson makes, which I think is over $100 million total, in I think it was a 4-year deal, he's not matching the contract. For a guy making that much money, you would expect 17 to 20 points a game and playing really good defense. And unfortunately, so far, we have not really gotten any of that from Cam Johnson. On the year, he's averaging 14 points a game. And after this performance, it'll probably be 13 point something. So he's been underwhelming. And he's a guy who was mainly brought back here because that was one of the main assets you got from the Kevin Durant trade, and they did not want to let him walk, which I completely understand. But this is his age 27 season. This should be the prime, and he played great in the playoffs last year. Mind you, it was 4 games. They got swept. But Cam Johnson was the most consistent net in the playoffs last year versus Philly. But so far in the regular season, he's had his moments. He might have had like one 30-point game at some point, but he has just not been worth the money so far, and it's been disappointing. So, I don't know. There's not much they can do. I think we're past the deadline where they can trade Cam Johnson because obviously, if you sign a guy, you can't trade him right away. But I think we're past that deadline. So if the Nets want to trade Cam Johnson, they probably can. But then again, his value is probably not that high now because he's had injuries. He's been inconsistent this year. A lot of times the lights are too bright when he's in the clutch. He just cannot make a clutch shot to save his life, it seems like. So, the value is not that high right now, but it kind of is what it is. I keep hoping he'll turn things around. He's an above average player, I feel like maybe average to above average. But his output should be better than what it is right now. It definitely should be better. So I'm hoping that he turns things around. The guy historically has been a good shooter, but he's been a bit off this year, and hopefully that turns around. But it's been concerning. I know a lot of fans are pissed off and kind of out on Cam Johnson, and I get it. But realistically speaking, he will most likely be here until, past the trade deadline, obviously, and maybe in the summer, if they're going after a big star, he might be like that big salary filler to send to a different team. I don't know, but for right now, Cam Johnson's probably finishing out the year here, so just play better. Mikal Bridges played 38 minutes. He kind of got re-injured with that thigh bruise, which I thought he was hurt pretty badly. He limped around and came back in. But 26 points on 9 of 17, so pretty good. 4 of 7 from 3. I'll take that. Was perfect at the line on 4 foul shots, 6 rebounds, had 5 assists. Did have 3 turnovers, and I feel like all 3 of those turnovers came in the same exact span. It was middle of the fourth quarter. He tried dribbling past somebody, and it didn't work, and he turned the ball over twice in a row. So the handles at times are not good, and I feel like Mikal trying to dribble through traffic is just as bad as it gets, and I hate seeing it. But at the same time, I do feel bad for Mikal Bridges. I do. The Nets put him on this pedestal. They want to make him the guy, make him the star, and try to sell tickets with his name. I get it. And Mikal Bridges is not meant to be that guy. So the Nets are putting him in a position where he doesn't belong, and he probably knows it. But there's not much he can do. This is the roster they have, and this is how they promote it, and it is what it is. And the other guy who should be getting most of the publicity, he's been an all-star a couple times and was almost Defensive Player of the Year, Ben Simmons, he doesn't play much for us. So I feel bad for Mikal Bridges. He's in a very, he's in a position where he's asked to do too much right now. And I feel bad for the guy. Anyway, Nick Claxton gave us 31 minutes, 7 of 10, 16 points. He did give us 6 rebounds and 2 blocks. Had a great block in this game at one point. It led to a transition bucket. I forget who shot it now. Was it Paul George? But it was like one of those blocks where he went way up high. Like, I think it might have been Paul George tried to make a floater, and Claxton just like jumped out of his shoes, and I think it led to a transition layup. So yeah, Claxton like had good moments in this game. He did shoot a 3 in a very weird time when the Clippers were like storming back, and the Clippers were probably down by like a few points, probably like 3 or 4 points, and Claxton shot a 3 in the corner with like 16 seconds left on the shot clock. That was a very ill-advised shot. Now, if it went in, we would have been like, hey, Nick Claxton, great shot, shooting with confidence. But obviously, since he missed it, people were like, what the hell is he doing? So yeah, not the best shot selection there by Nick Claxton, but I am happy to see he's taking threes. Like, I do like seeing that, but just probably not the right situation. He also had a great poster on, I think it was Plumlee. So it was a great pass by Cam Thomas that play too. Cam Thomas took Kawhi Leonard on the baseline. The double came. He gave a great bounce pass to Claxton in the paint, and he posterized Plumlee. So that was a great play by Cam Thomas and Nick Claxton. Spencer Dinwiddie gave us probably his best game in a long time. He played well versus, I think, Portland, and he looked okay during the Lakers game too. But this was probably the best Dinwiddie game since like the first 15 games of the year. Like, he looked really good. 33 minutes, 6 of 9, 4 of 6 from 3. He did have 7 assists, 16 points, only 1 turnover. So I was impressed, Dinwiddie's been called out, and, that report came out before the Trailblazers game. I guess that was Wednesday. So sometime on Wednesday, that report came out that some NBA people think that Dinwiddie has kind of checked out and given up. And I feel like ever since that report, he's been stepping up and playing much better. So I feel bad for Dinwiddie as well, because I do think Dinwiddie at one point wanted to be extended here. The Nets don't want to extend him. And it seems like, based on what I understand, is that Dinwiddie was promised he would be moved by now and traded to a different team, and it has not happened, and we're sitting here on January 21st, and he's still a Net. So Dinwiddie probably feels like he's wasting his time, and Dinwiddie had that quote earlier in the year about, naming this team's players for the future and didn't include himself. So I think Dinwiddie realizes, like, I'm not a part of this team in the future. So he probably just realizes, like, why should I try here? Like, I'm not going to be a Net for much longer. So it all makes sense. But to get his trade value up, I'm hoping Dinwiddie plays well every time he's out there, but it's still weird that they start him. Like, I don't get it. They start Dinwiddie, they start Cam Johnson, they keep starting DFS, and you still can't get Cam Thomas in the starting lineup. That really annoys me. I just don't get it. It's not like, I feel like every Nets fan feels that way. There might be a couple that, don't agree with that, but I just feel like it's pretty irrational to just keep throwing out the same starting lineup. And the Nets have been like 2-12 since this lineup has been starting. So it's not working. It's like the definition of insanity, which is the alarming part. But anyway, Royce O'Neal was not good today, shooting-wise. He was 1 of 6 overall. He got to the line at one point, made both foul shots, but 0 of 5 from 3, which you can't have. He got some good looks too, I remember. So just a rough one there for Royce O'Neal, but he was a +8. So when he was out there, they were doing well, but just not a good shooting day. Trendon Watford, 12 minutes, 1 of 3. Didn't do much. 1 assist, 1 steal. I do like seeing him play. He definitely adds an aspect to this team that they need, a ball handler, a big guy that can switch on defense to anybody. So I like when he plays. DSJ was pretty good. 6 of 8 in 18 minutes, made a 3-pointer, had 3 rebounds, gave us 1 assist, did have 2 turnovers, but 13 points, not bad. He made that corner 3 once again, so I liked what I saw. Cam Thomas, I don't think I touched on him too much, but 27 minutes, which is another thing. Like, bro, he has to play more than 27 minutes. He just turned 23. He's probably your best player outside of Mikal Bridges, and even that's a debate. 8 of 17, 1 of 5 from 3. Now, Cam did have some really good looks in the late fourth quarter on 3-pointers, and he missed them both. So, like, that sucked, but for the most part, Cam was really good today. He was pretty much flawless on Friday versus the Lakers, but Cam did have 4 turnovers. That's the downside. But he gave us 6 assists, which is nice. I feel like he's been noticeably better the past 3, 4, 5 games of just having, like, better vision and knowing where to go with the ball. So the growth of Cam Thomas's game as being more than just a scorer is definitely happening. Like, you can tell when you're watching Cam Thomas, like, he's making reads that he wasn't making in the past. So it gets me excited. But at the same time, I feel like this organization just has no faith in him whatsoever. Like, the way they use him, the way they play him, they've let him more loose the last 2 games and let him do what he wants. Like, it's always like that dribble handoff shit, which I don't know why they always do that, but it's been more of Cam Thomas like controlling the offense instead of running through Jacque Vaughn's horrible scheme. But still, I want the guy to start, and the offense should be running through Cam Thomas. He's like the only exciting player to watch on this team. I just want to see it. Like, why not? You're 8 games below 500. You're going nowhere. You're a play-in team at best that'll probably get knocked out in the first round. That's probably this team's ceiling if they even get there. So, like, developing Cam Thomas should be way up on their list of priorities for this year, and it seems like that's not the case. It feels like they are so destined to make the playoffs this year so Joe Tsai can sell tickets to 2 home playoff games. Like, it's so stupid. Like, give Cam Thomas the minutes he deserves. Let him start like he deserves. I just don't get it. Like, if I'm his teammates at this point, I would pull like what they did in that Rudy movie and go into the coach's office and put my jersey on the table and say, look, I'm out of here, or you start Cam Thomas. Like, something like that. Like, it's just crazy at this point. But I don't know. We say the same thing every time about Cam. Maybe one day it'll change, but, whatever. Lonnie Walker, only 10 minutes. He may have re-injured himself. It looked like at one point. He was definitely like grabbing at his hamstring. He kept playing though, so I guess he was fine. But I don't know. I feel like Lonnie has had issues the entire year with his knee, his hamstring. It's been bad. But Lonnie came in the first, I think it was late first quarter, and he was lighting it up. He was 3 of 4, 2 of 2 from 3, 2 steals, 2 rebounds, had 8 points, but only 10 minutes. Like, the guy has to play more. If you take some of, Royce's minutes, he can take some of Dinwiddie's minutes, he can take some of DSJ's minutes, Watford, like whoever. Like, you got to find a way to get Lonnie Walker. Like, Lonnie Walker on this team should be 20 minutes per game. I don't see why not. He's like one of the few guys on this team that can actually create for himself, and the Nets need that. Like, for some reason in crunch time today, they kept in Cam Johnson when they clearly needed another ball handler out there. But they insisted on playing Cam Johnson, which, once again, he does not make clutch shots, so I don't get the point. But there's definitely, there should be more opportunity for Lonnie Walker. I just don't get why. He's on a 1-year minimum deal. I would like to see him here for a couple more years at least. Like, extend him in the offseason if you can. But I don't know. I don't know if it's like the whole minute restriction or whatever it is, but it's just annoying. Like, he should be playing more. I also wanted to mention, this is not related to the game, but I'm sure most of you saw this. I think it happened on, I don't know what day this was, maybe like Thursday, Friday. But Spencer Dinwiddie, who's of course mostly active on Twitter or X, obviously you can see people's likes. It's public, so it's public information. So Spencer Dinwiddie liked a tweet saying, basically, a guy quote tweeted the whole like Dinwiddie is showing minimal effort and all that. Like, the guy quote tweeted that and saying, "We watched Spencer Dinwiddie go from being out of the league to making a name for himself. Effort and character was never a question, all heart. We may argue about his game, and that's fair, but this is not Spencer. Something smells in Brooklyn." And Spencer Dinwiddie liked that. So I don't know what the hell it means. And obviously since that time, Dinwiddie has been playing with more effort. But it leads me to the question of what the hell goes on inside this organization. Like, what goes on behind closed doors with this team? Like, how bad can it be here? Like, I already don't like Joe Tsai as it is. I've really soured on Sean Marks, who ever since that, first Harden trade has been awful. Like, I mean, I don't want to say he's been awful, but like, Sean Marks has pissed me off. Like, he made some good signings in the offseason, sure, and I don't know how much of it is, Joe Tsai induced and how much of it is from him, but they signed good players in the offseason. Like, getting Lonnie Walker was nice, and like drafting Cam Thomas was good. I know KD probably had some influence on that, apparently, drafting Cam Thomas, but still, like, Dennis Smith Jr. has been a nice surprise, and Trenton Watford. Like, yeah, there's been good signings here and whatnot, but like, what goes on in this organization that makes these players so miserable at times? Like, how do you lose 3 Hall of Fame players in a span of 1 year? Like, how do you do that? And then how do you at this point, piss off Spencer Dinwiddie, who's been here forever. Obviously, it has not been all the way through, but he's had 2 separate stops here. He's been here for a while. Like, how do you get to that point with Dinwiddie, who is not even a Hall of Fame player, not even an All-Star? How do you get to that point with him where he is, like, at the point where people around the league think he is showing minimal effort? Like, what did they do to this man to make him play like this and not give effort? So, like, the whole thing is frustrating. I don't know what it is about this team and what goes on. I just hate the way this organization is ran. And, it sucks when it's the owner because there's nothing you can do. Like, the only thing you can do is hope that the owner sells the team. And I don't think I've seen anything that Joe Tsai wants to sell the team. There was that one report that came out a couple years ago about the Nets losing money one year, but, so far he has not sold the team. So, it's tough to, it's tough to argue that, like, he should be gone, Joe Tsai, because the only man that can make Joe Tsai go away is Joe Tsai. So that's the bad part about it. But, I continue to dislike this man because the direction of this team is non-existent. And a lot of it is because of him and his personal agenda against Kyrie Irving, which I don't want to touch on that again, but, like, it's all relevant to what goes on here today. Like, I just don't get how this team decided to move off of 2 all-star future Hall of Fame players in Irving and Durant. And by the way, I went back and I saw this picture in my photos on my phone from last year. So at this time last year, so from January 19th until January 30th of 2023, this was when Kevin Durant was out of the lineup with that MCL injury. Kyrie was averaging 34.9 points per game, 7 assists, and 6 rebounds in a 7-game span from, January 19th to January 30th. And Kyrie did all that and kept the Nets afloat. And Joe Tsai still did not want to extend him. He would rather get that man off his team and get his team back and put out this mid to below average team out there for us. I hate that. Joe Tsai is not about winning. I hate owners that, like, would rather do things because they have an agenda against certain players and it's politics based and all that. Like, I hate that shit. Like, I'm a fan. I've watched a lot of bad basketball from the Nets in my lifetime already, probably more than anybody should. And we've had so much heartbreak with this team. And, like, for years, I was just praying and hoping for a team that would have all-stars and fun to watch. And we finally had it. Like, the whole James Harden thing, like, yeah, it only lasted a year. It wasn't like there was no longevity to it, but it had its moments, and it was awesome when it was, going great. But even then, when he left and you still had Harden and you still had Kyrie and Durant, it's like, all right, we still have 2 incredible players. Durant's been like a top 5 player during the time he was here, and Kyrie's been like a top 20 player when he plays. And, like, they still moved off those guys to give us this. And, like, I know we have those Suns picks, which could be valuable in the future, and maybe that 1 first-rounder from the Mavericks might be valuable in the future. But you're talking about moves that are not going to happen until, like, 2027, 2028. Like, we got to wait a long-ass time. And instead of, like, trying to just rebuild and do this thing the right way, the Nets tried the thing in sports that never works, which is, like, trying to win and rebuild at the same time, which, like, it just never works. It really doesn't. There was that one year the Thunder did it when they had Chris Paul and they, like, won a surprising amount of games. But still, the Thunder turned into, like, one of the best teams in basketball already. So that worked out for them. But overall, it's very rare for a team to go from, like, competing for a championship, which the Nets were at this time last year, and, go to a team that, like, can make all those trades and still be competing for a championship. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I remember there was an article that came out on January 30th of last year, 2023, and it went over, like, the NBA Finals odds, and they listed, like, all the teams and, like, who had the best odds to win it. And the Brooklyn Nets were number 3. I think it was, like, the Celtics and, like, some Western Conference team, I forget. But, yeah, the Nets were the 3rd highest team for Finals odds. And, like, KD was, like, a couple weeks from returning, and Joe Tsai wanted to play hardball and not give Kyrie the extension he wanted. And here we are sitting with this boring-ass team that's 17-25. Like, I just cannot forgive Joe Tsai for that. Like, obviously, if you watch me in the past, I'm a big Kyrie fan. Like, he was my favorite Net. And, I was never, like, the biggest KD fan, but, like, Obviously, when he was in net, I loved him. But I don't know how you let those guys go and give us this and think like this is fun. And I remember Joe Tsai had that tweet right after the trades happened. He was like, I think the Nets lost a close game. Might have been like the first game they played when Mikal Bridges, played against the Sixers in his first game as a net, and they lost on that buzzer beater because Dinwiddie had the ball in his hand too long. But I think Mikal Bridges like tweeted out something, and Joe Tsai quote tweeted him and said like, "We'll get him next time. Brooklyn loves this team," or something. Or he said like, "Brighter days are ahead. Brooklyn loves this team." And I feel like ever since Joe Tsai said that, this team has been awful. Swept in the playoffs, 17-25 record this year. It's just ugly. I just hate watching this. Like, it's such a boring basketball team that feels directionless. And the part that bothers me is it all could have been avoided. All you had to do was give Irving the guaranteed contract he wanted, and we could have had, 2 Hall of Fame level players here and hopefully fielded a good team around them. But, part of it that makes it even worse is Ben Simmons, like that whole trade as well. Like, Ben Simmons not playing. Like, if Ben Simmons was playing like Sixers Ben Simmons this entire time, the past 2.5 years, like, there would probably be less to complain about. But getting Ben Simmons and only having him play, like, I forget what the number is, but Ben Simmons has only played like a quarter of his games that he's been able to play since the start of the 2021-22 season, when he started out that year on the Sixers and didn't play at all. So that's the frustrating part, is that like I feel like if Ben Simmons was healthy, this team would probably look way different right now, but he's just not. And I feel like that version of Ben Simmons is never going to come back, so it's in the past. And speaking of him, like, he could be back soon apparently. Like, they keep talking him up like he's going to come back soon, and hopefully he does. But at this point, I have no idea. Like, I don't know when he's going to come back. If something came out tomorrow that he's shut down for the rest of the year, I would not be surprised. Like, nothing about Ben Simmons will surprise me at this point. But there's also a chance that he's back by next week. So I have no idea what to think. But hopefully he's back soon. This team obviously misses him and needs him. But yeah, I cannot stand Joe Tsai. Just do not like the guy. He chose to make a personal decision over a winning decision, and here we are. So, and like, even when the Nets had all those problems last year with Durant missing time and the Kyrie with the Amazon link, like, the Nets were still a good team. Like, they were second in the East when KD got hurt. And then I think when the first trade request was made by Kyrie, they were probably in like the 3rd or 4th seed. Like, they were still a good team. And now we're sitting here not even in the freaking play-in. Like, it's just we're in the 11th seed. So that's the frustrating part. Is like, yeah, you can move off of those guys. Like, you can move off of Harden and Durant and Irving, but they didn't even get one superstar in return for any of those guys. Like, that's the frustrating part. And like, was Ben Simmons ever a superstar? I mean, maybe like borderline, but I don't think so. He was probably more of just an all-star player. I think superstar and all-star is a different thing. Like, superstar is like your top 10 in the league type stuff, But I don't know. It's just frustrating. And the crazy part is that Sean Marks still has a job. Like, I don't know how you go through all this. The Nets have been swept like 3 times in the past 5 years, and they've never made it past the second round. They traded like 7 first-round picks for James Harden, and he only lasted here for 13 months. And like, all that stuff happened, and he's still the general manager, which is crazy. Like, I like Sean Marks for the most part. He's done plenty of good things here, but I just feel like sometimes it's just time to turn a page. It's just sometimes like you're tired of hearing the same voice and the same vision. Like, I would just like to see something fresh. And, not just his personnel moves, but the coaches he's hired the past 2 times have been horrible. Like, hiring Steve Nash, a first-time head coach, when you had a championship-level team that I'm sure when Steve Nash was hired that the Nets had an idea of like, hey, we might be able to trade for a 3rd star. So like, the Nets probably knew that team was going to have like a championship type window, and yet they still gave the job to a first-year head coach in Steve Nash. So that was horrible. And Steve Nash was a bad coach. Like, he just was. He had a great staff in the first year with D'Antoni and Ime Udoka on it, but to give that team to a first-year head coach was never a good idea. But Steve Nash was just not good. He got fired like 6 games into last year, and the coach he replaced him with, which is a guy who's been here forever. I think Jacques Vaughn was the first assistant hired by Kenny Atkinson, and Kenny Atkinson has been here, or he was here in like 2016. So Jacque Vaughn's been here for almost a freaking decade, and there was the rumor that the Nets tried to hire Udoka last year. I think the truth is that the NBA stepped in front of them and said you can't hire him in season. Like, I think the NBA did not allow it. So I know people blame Kyrie and stuff, but I think the NBA just did not want to have Udoka hired during the season last year. But what the Nets could have done was just waited out the year. Like, the Nets gave Jacque Vaughn 2 extensions last year. They didn't have to do that. They could have just rode out the year and saw how it ended, and obviously it ended with a sweep to Philly, and they could have tried in the offseason to get Udoka. But then again, would Udoka come here knowing that Kevin was in Phoenix and Kyrie was in Dallas? That's another thing. I don't know. But just so many what-ifs and frustrating things about this organization that should not have happened or should have happened, and it's just, it seems like everything they do just goes the wrong way. So it's very annoying, and I miss watching fun basketball. I miss getting my hopes up about possibly competing for a championship, and although they fell short every freaking year, it was still nice to know, like, hey, if things break right, like, we have a chance. Like, this team can go places, and now there's none of that. And there's nothing in the foreseeable future that makes me feel good about this Nets team. I mentioned those Phoenix picks. It's like next year, the year after that, and maybe one other. So we're talking about draft picks in like 4 or 5 years from now that like may make an impact. We don't even know what's going to happen. Obviously, if the Suns implode and Booker asks out and Durant keeps getting hurt or something, and Bradley Beal keeps getting hurt, like something like that, like, obviously, that's one way to get your franchise back on top, but we're talking about something that's like 7 years away at this point. So, it's just, it's annoying. I just wish there was better management here, but once again, you can't fire the owner. He has to sell the team, and I see it all the time. There's plenty of people on Twitter that, at Joe Tsai and tell him to sell the team, but he probably ain't going to do it. And it's more frustrating knowing that he probably cares more about his lacrosse teams and the New York Liberty. Like, I feel like the Nets are probably like the last thing that Joe Tsai cares about. It's crazy. So I don't know. I know he was at the game today, but I think that's because he lives in like that area. Like, he's in San Diego or something, isn't he? I'm pretty sure he has like a house there, or whatever. He might live there. I don't know, but obviously pretty close for him to go there to Los Angeles. So maybe that's why. But anyway, the entire direction of this team is frustrating, and I'm trying to see when the trade deadline is. Let's see when the trade deadline is. It's got to be coming up somewhat soon, February 8th. So we're like 3 weeks away. Or so, no, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. So we're getting there. Is that, February 8th. Yeah, that's it. So we're getting there in a couple weeks. They got to do something. Like, I would much rather see them like make moves to not compete now, because that just does not make sense to me. Like the DeJounte Murray thing, it's been thrown out there, and of course Murray's playing out of his mind lately, and it's going to drive up the trade asking price. But if I'm the Nets, I'm not trying to acquire anybody like over the age of like 25. Like, I'm trying to like get young guys that are not playing that much on like these win now teams, and whether that's like a Jalen Hood-Schifino or whoever, like a Jordan Hawkins maybe. I don't know if those guys are available, but at least check. Like, just try and get these young guys that with playing time and with experience and good coaching, which hopefully we have one day, that those guys could turn into something. So that's what I'd be looking for. I don't want to trade for DeJounte Murray. Like, I just don't know where that gets you. I'm sure the Nets have a vision. I talked about this before of having Mikal Bridges and DeJounte Murray and Donovan Mitchell on the same team. That's probably what they want to do. But if your entire plans hinder on Donovan Mitchell becoming available, who says Donovan Mitchell wants to be a Net? And who says he would sign an extension here? Like, he's always wanted to play in New York, but mostly for the Knicks, I believe. So if the Nets are still not that good of a team, like, who says that Donovan Mitchell even wants to come here? So to me, that's kind of crazy. But hey, that could be their plan, and we'll see if they do it. But overall, it's just, I don't know. There's nothing to look forward to. So hopefully in the next couple weeks, we have some clarification about where this team is heading and what the direction is. And before I sign off, I'll take a look at the upcoming schedule. Hopefully it's not that hard, but I don't know. I mean, there's so many L's, man. Ever since that Phoenix game, there are so many L's on the schedule. It is disgusting. from 13-10 to 17-25. They play the Knicks on Tuesday, which is a nationally televised game, so that's going to be a rough one probably. Thursday versus Minnesota. They're going to beat us probably. We are home for that game, which is nice. There's a nice, stretch of home games. I think there's 4 or 5 home games in a row. 5 home games in a row. So it's Knicks, Timberwolves, Rockets, Jazz, Phoenix Suns. So, yeah. Might be a bit tough there at the end with Phoenix, and you have New York and Minnesota. Houston and Utah are winnable games, but I feel like those teams are playing well lately, so definitely not easy. The Nets can obviously go 0-5. It would not shock me. After that, it's at Philly, home versus Golden State, home versus Dallas, Kyrie's return, home versus Cleveland, home versus San Antonio. Then you have a back-to-back versus Boston. So there's not many easy games coming up. I would say the most winnable ones are, once again, I think Houston and Utah are toss-up games at best for us. Golden State has not been that great this year. Cleveland's been hot. San Antonio they can probably beat, but then again, they have their nights where they look great. So I don't know. I have no idea, but I feel like this team might not even win 30 games. I said this a couple podcasts ago, but yeah, this schedule is not looking that easy. I don't know what's gonna happen. I feel like I don't know. I don't want to say this because I'll sound like a bad fan, but if the season goes off the rails and it leads to Jacques Vaughn getting fired and actually Sean Marks getting fired and the necessary changes happen that should happen, then fine. They can lose games. I don't really care. So whatever happens, happens. If they win, cool. If not, then it's probably best for us in the long term. That's how I look at it. So it's kind of like me with the Giants. I root against them in the latter half of most seasons because they're usually 2-6 or 1-5, and there's no shot at the playoffs. So I hope for a better draft pick. But speaking of football, there was good games on today. So at least with the Nets shitting the bed in the fourth quarter, there was still some fun football to watch. So we had that going for us. But for the Nets, it was an embarrassing fourth quarter meltdown, as I wanted to say. So yeah, just a shame. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll probably talk to you guys. I'll try and go for after that Houston game on Saturday. So 6 days from now, 6 o'clock game. That's a weird start time. So a 6 o'clock game against Houston. I'll try and make a podcast after that. If not, I'll probably make one after the Utah. Maybe I'll just wait till Phoenix or something. I don't know, but maybe Saturday. We'll see what happens, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, leave a like and all that, and I'll talk to you guys next time.